Hello everyone, welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. The Truck Stop Killer. In the summer of 1985, somewhere near Martinsburg, Pennsylvania, the body of a young woman was pulled from a truck stop dumpster. I had just hitched a ride and was sitting in a nearby truck waiting for the driver to pay for gas so we could leave. When they found her, there was shouting. A man from the restaurant ran out and started yelling for everyone to stay away as a small crowd gathered around the dumpster in the rain. Word filtered back that the dead girl was a teenage hitchhiker. I remember thinking it could be me, since I was also a teenage hitchhiker. Watching the driver of my truck walk back across the wet asphalt, a second thought arose: it could be him. He could be the killer. The driver reached the cab, swung up behind the wheel, and said we should get going. He said he didn't want to get caught up in anything time-consuming. Stowing his paperwork, he released the brake. Neither of us said anything about the dead girl. As we pulled away, I looked once more in the side mirror. They were stringing crime tape around the dumpster just as another state trooper rolled into the lot. That ride turned out to be fine. We drove up to Ohio drinking Diet Coke and listening to Bruce Springsteen. The trucker bought me lunch and didn't even try to have sex with me, which made him a prince in my world. Several days later, though, heading south on I-95 through the Carolinas, I got picked up by another trucker who was not fine. I don't remember much about him except that he was taller and leaner than most truckers and didn't wear jeans or t-shirts. He wore a cotton button-down with the sleeves rolled neatly up over his biceps and had the cleanest cab I ever saw. He must have seemed okay, or I wouldn't have gotten in the truck with him. Once out on the road, though, he changed. He stopped responding to my questions. His bearing shifted. He grew taller in his seat, and his face muscles relaxed into something both arrogant and blank. Then he started talking about the dead girl in the dumpster and asked me if I'd ever heard of the Laughing Death Society. We laugh at death, he told me. A few minutes later, he pulled the truck onto the shoulder of the road by some woods, took out a hunting knife, and told me to get into the back of the cab. I began talking, saying the same things over and over. I said I knew he didn't want to do it. I said it was his choice. I said he could do it in a few minutes. I said it was his choice. I said I wouldn't go to the cops if nothing happened to me, but it was his choice until he looked at me and I went still. There was going to be no more talking. I knew in my body that it was over. Then he said one word: run. Without looking back, I ran into the woods and hid. I stayed there until I saw the truck pull onto the interstate. It was getting dark. I was still in shock, so I walked back out to the same road and started hitching south. I never went to the police and didn't tell anyone for years. This spring a friend sent a news story link about a serial killer with the subject line, "Is this your guy?" The serial killer's name was Robert Ben Rhodes. Rhodes was a long-haul trucker, in jail since 1990, who had recently been convicted of a couple of new cold cases. I didn't recognize him from the initial photos, but as I found pictures of him as a younger man, his face came to seem more familiar. The glasses were the same, the curve of the cheekbone, and something about the expression, particularly the set of the mouth. It had the same neutral arrogance. Rhodes looked like the guy who picked me up. But then, Rhodes looks like a lot of guys. He would only have been 39 at the time, and I remember the trucker as an older man with light brown or graying hair. To a teenager, though, someone pushing 40 is pretty old, and hair often looks darker in photos. The light in my memory is strange, too. It was a cloudy day just before a summer storm, and everything in the truck is cast in gray. After receiving my friend's email, I left messages with the FBI but was relieved when they were not returned. The memory was 27 years old, and nothing in it was actionable. The photos stayed in my head, though, and with them came questions. What if the man who pulled the knife on me really did murder the hitchhiker? Why did he let me go? Who was the girl in the dumpster? Why didn't I go to anyone? I needed to understand what my responsibility was and to find my own answers, if nobody else's, so I began to look. I have no fascination with serial killers, so I didn't realize that Rhodes was famous. There are articles, TV episodes, and books on him. Driven to Kill, Roadside Prey, Killer on the Road, and from these sources I learned that every grim and secret fear I have about the human race is manifest in Robert Ben Rhodes. Rhodes was a sexual sadist. He kidnapped women, tortured and raped them for weeks before killing them. What is known about him in the 1980s is murky. He was involved in the BDSM and swinger scene in his hometown of Houston. He was married. When he was caught, he said that he had been doing this for 15 years, which would put the onset of his murders back into the 1970s. His trucking logs place him in the area of 50 unsolved murders in the 3 years prior to his arrest alone. While not all 50 cases have been tied to Rhodes yet, and Rhodes himself has admitted to only 3 murders, the FBI has strong reason to believe that at his peak he was killing 1 to 3 women a month. Rhodes was first arrested when an Arizona state trooper found a screaming woman named Lisa Pennell * chained in the back of his cab. He was charged with kidnapping and assault. What put him away for life, though, was the rape and murder of Regina Walters, a 14-year-old girl from Pasadena, Texas. Rhodes picked her up along with her boyfriend, Ricky Jones, in February of 1990. Jones was promptly killed, and his remains were discovered later in Mississippi. Rhodes kept Regina for at least 2 weeks. He shaved her head and pubic hair, pierced her with fishing hooks, dressed her up in a black dress and heels, and photographed her in moments of terror, then killed her with a garrote made of baling wire, leaving her 100-pound body to decompose in a barn in Illinois off Interstate 70. Behind the tragic elements of Regina's story, like some kind of pentimento, I saw my own. Like me, she left home with her older boyfriend. Also like me, Regina became dependent upon the grace of truck drivers. In her weeks with Rhodes, many drivers saw her, but somehow no alarm was raised. She passed through that world as if she were invisible. In 1985 my biggest problem was sleep. There was no safe way for me to get it. I left home in early January, hitchhiking south from New York City with my 21-year-old boyfriend. We had $60 and a Smith Wesson 5-shot with 1 bullet in it, which we accidentally fired off in a field in Maryland during a discussion about whether the safety was on. I had a guitar and a knapsack full of souvenirs of my girlhood, notes from friends, earrings, and song lyrics. I was 15. People don't leave home because things are going well, they leave because they feel they have to, and right or wrong, that's how I felt. I lived with my mom in New York, and the fights between us were growing in intensity and emotional violence. I don't think either of us knew what to do about it. There was talk of me going to live with my dad in Virginia, where I had traditionally spent my summers. By then, though, I had been kicked out of 2 schools for absences and was cutting myself regularly. My emotions were a planet around which I spun like a moon. As I saw it, it didn't matter if I left, because in so many ways I was already gone. On my way out, I destroyed every single picture of me over the age of 12 so that there would be nothing to give to the police. That first night, my boyfriend and I stayed in an abandoned barn in Maryland. It was off the side of the freeway and probably very much like the one Regina Walters was found in. The barn had a loft with wind coming through broken slats and was surrounded by the same kind of brown grassy field and frozen mud. Like Regina, I also had a little journal and probably wrote something in it that night, because it was far too cold to sleep. We were back on the road before dawn, walking down a highway covered in black ice, shivering in our hoodies. A trucker picked us up at daybreak, and I rode in a semi for the first time. Being up high, warm, and looking out over the traffic was a great improvement. The trucker bought us chicken fried steak, chatted amiably, and let us nap in the cab while he drove. While we were asleep, he pulled into a small truck stop, and I woke to his hand down my shirt. I kept my eyes closed, stayed still, then rolled away from him, pretending I was still asleep. A few minutes later, I got up like nothing had happened. The trucker went to pay for gas, and my boyfriend and I went to use the bathroom. When we came back, the truck was gone and every reminder of home with it: my guitar, my knapsack, everything except the Smith & Wesson, which we sold later in New Orleans. That first ride was a preview of how it would often go for me with truckers dodging sex and getting stranded, but I had learned one crucial lesson: when a truck slows down, you get up. Getting sleep was pretty easy with a boyfriend, because one of us could always stay awake. 6 weeks later, though, we parted ways. Somewhere in Arizona we had a fight in a gas station off I-10, and we each climbed into separate trucks, and that was it. I was on my own. Without fake ID, I couldn't stay in a shelter. Sleeping by myself on the street made me a target, and having sex with some creepy old guy for a spot on a mattress also held little appeal. So I went back to hitchhiking in circles and discovered a state of half-consciousness wherein I could be asleep and not asleep at the same time. I could rest but not dream. I could tell you the last 3 songs played on the radio if you asked, but only if you asked. If you didn't, I had no memory of them at all. I stuck to trucks because they were safer than cars. When you get in a truck at a truck stop, everyone notices. They chatter about it on the CB, and you are driving off in what amounts to a huge billboard advertising the name of the company. I needed visibility to stay alive. But it was also a dangerous form of brinksmanship, because if a trucker was going to cross the line, the higher stakes meant he was going to do it for real. There was a gap before that line, and most truckers wouldn't take it that far. I lived in that gap. Truck stops in the 1980s were closed worlds where what went on passed unnoticed on the outside. The stores were dimly lit and filled with smoke, radically different from the family travel plazas of today. Magazine porn often dominated the aisles, glossies like Hustler and Barely Legal, but also newsprint rags with cheap color covers. Bottles of isobutyl nitrite and rotgut aphrodisiacs like Locker Room and Spanish Fly crowded the counters by the register, along with the iconic bumper sticker "Ass, Gas, or Grass no one rides for free." Back then, though, my thoughts weren't on misogyny, they were on logistics. I needed to find rides and usually couldn't get into the restaurant. The general rule was that you were a prostitute until proven otherwise. And then you were still a prostitute. Waitresses were the first to kick you out. That forced me into asking for rides in the hallway by the showers. Over time, I learned safer ways of getting rides by having truckers navigate the CB radio for me. Women couldn't really get on the zoo channel, as they called it then, because the sound of their voice would trigger 20 minutes of crass chatter. There was only one word for woman on the CB, and that was beaver. Even the guys who were trying to help had used it. They had to make up stories for me. I got a beaver needs a ride to Flagstaff for her grandma's funeral, don't want no trouble, come on back. There was always a sick mom or dead grandparent involved, and I was almost always abandoned by my jerk of a boyfriend, who'd made off with all my money and my car. Through these stories, I jumped from truck to truck. Like a lemur in a canopy of trees, I barely saw the ground. Even so, it still wasn't safe to sleep. Adhering to my rule, that the only safe truck was a moving truck, meant I woke when a truck took an exit. I woke when it slowed for traffic. When it turned, when it downshifted, when it drifted toward the shoulder, I woke. Wearing down from lack of sleep and trying to get a handle on my risk level, I began to work off a 1 to 5 scale of sexually aggressive behavior. You, the driver, kept your urges to yourself. You asked me to have sex and offered to pay. You told me I owed you sex for the ride and chicken fried steak and threatened to drop me off somewhere dangerous. You dropped me off somewhere dangerous. I had to jump when you slowed down because you were going to rape me. Most truckers occupied the middle of the scale, but the trucker who resembled Rhodes didn't have a place on it. Anybody who pulls a knife on you in an enclosed space like a truck is terrifying. But beyond that, it was the man's demeanor that was so chilling. He wasn't nervous, angry, or excited. He was grave and methodical, as if preparing to dress a deer. From reading about Rhodes, I knew that he preferred hitchhikers to prostitutes and specifically targeted runaways. I also knew the first thing he did was to get them into the back of his sleeper cab, which had anchor points for shackles. But I hadn't seen any shackles. I only saw the man with the knife. It has to be him, a friend said. How many of those guys could there be? According to the FBI, quite a few. In 2009 the feds went public with a program called the Highway Serial Killings Initiative in response to a rising number of dead bodies found along the interstates. Some of these were women left in dumpsters. Narrowing the field to those last seen around truck stops and rest areas, the Bureau counted over 500 bodies, almost all women. Of the 200 people on a suspect list, almost all of them were long-haul truckers. But nobody had to tell me that people like Rhodes killed people like me and got away with it. Going through the truck stops, I'd heard about women getting their throats slit or strangled. I'd heard of at least one who got hung up on a meat hook in the back of a refrigerated trailer because a trucker thought she'd given him VD. At night I listened to the voices of prostitutes on the CB, barely intelligible between streams of name-calling. Hello, honey. It's me, Sugar Bear, in Party Row. Anyone want to party? Lot lizards is what truckers call prostitutes who work truck stops, and since many drivers don't distinguish between hitchhikers and prostitutes, I was a lot lizard, too. If we went missing, months could pass before a report was filed, and by then there was little to connect the missing person in one state with the decomposed remains in another. When the Illinois state trooper who was trying to identify the body of Regina Walters, the girl Rhodes left in that barn, put her forensic description out on the national teletype, he was totally unprepared for the response. He requested information on missing Caucasian females aged 13 to 15 years old who had disappeared 6 to 9 months earlier. He got over 900 matches. If there was any way to connect my story to Rhodes, it would be through the body of the girl in the dumpster. Records on her would provide a date and a place that could then be checked against Rhodes's trucking logs. To at least one of my questions, was Rhodes my guy, I'd have a clear answer, a simple yes or no. I began by Googling things like dead girl truck stop Martinsburg. Nothing came up, but that wasn't too surprising. Her murder happened 27 years ago and was essentially pre-internet. I pulled up a map of Martinsburg, Pennsylvania, and that's where things started to get hazy. Martinsburg was nothing but a pinprick, just a dot on a minor route feeding into a mid-size highway on the outskirts of Altoona, PA, not the sort of place you'd expect to find a busy truck stop. Had I confused the state? I did a search on towns named Martinsburg. There were 7 within range: Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, West Virginia, and New York, all less than a day's drive apart. A week before the girl was found in the dumpster, though, I'd gone to see my dad in Virginia. At the time, he was struggling himself, living with several other guys in a house where you flushed the toilet with a bucket of water and working what little construction there was in the county. I quickly realized I would have been nothing but a burden. The morning I left, I asked him to take me to the closest truck stop so I could get a ride going toward California. It was a made-up destination, a Grapes of Wrath narrative of brighter futures. I was sure he would remember where he took me back then, so last spring I called him. I didn't tell him about my recent inquiries at first, I just asked where he'd dropped me off. Without any hesitation he said Martinsburg, West Virginia. Were there any murders that summer? I asked him. There was that hitchhiker. You called and left a message a day or so after I dropped you off, saying I was going to read about a dead 17-year-old hitchhiker they found in a truck stop and that it wasn't you. My whole body relaxed. My memory may have been bent by sleep deprivation, but I was not crazy. There was a Martinsburg truck stop somewhere in my story, and there was a dead 17-year-old hitchhiker. She had existed enough for me to call my dad all those years ago and warn him about what he would read. And if it happened, she could be found. It was just a matter of looking harder. The original Rhodes investigation had woven a complex web, entangling local and federal agencies in 5 different states. Eventually the locus shifted to the Houston FBI, because at some point every thread ran through Texas. Rhodes was from Texas. His wife, Deborah Davis, was from Texas. Regina Walters and Ricky Jones were from Texas. He picked up 2 of his other victims in Texas. I flew to Austin to meet with 2 retired FBI men, Special Agents Mark Young and Robert F. Lee, who'd both worked on the case. Young was a profiler for the Bureau as well as a field agent. Over lunch at a local sushi place, he taught me the difference between a mode of operation and a signature. Modes of operation change. They are more like habits, he said, and can adapt to circumstances or mood. Rhodes, for instance, used guns and ligature strangulation and probably knives, too. A signature, however, does not change. Sexual sadists in particular work off erotic maps established early on. They get more nuanced and elaborate, but the basic topography remains the same. One of Rhodes's signatures was shaving the head and pubic hair of his female victims. Piercings around the breasts, bruising, and other signs of torture were also frequently found. Young, a 6'4" Texan and third-generation lawman, opened his laptop and pulled up a picture of a woman named Shauna Holtz. Only days before Regina Walters was taken, Rhodes had been detained by the police in Houston for the possible sexual assault and kidnapping of Holtz. She'd been picked up in a truck stop, shackled into the back of the cab, tortured and raped for weeks. She'd escaped when Rhodes pulled into a Houston brewery. I'd always read that she got away because Rhodes forgot to chain her in, but I found out from Young that she'd not been shackled when she escaped. Rhodes had told her to sit there and be a good girl. But Holtz, 18 years old, had been on the street since she was 12. By her own account, she had been raped at least 20 times and had already had a baby. She knew how to survive. Whatever the man thought he had broken in her had already been broken and healed back stronger. She didn't do what he expected. She ran. She brought the police right back to Rhodes's truck but then balked at pressing charges, so they had to let him go. The story was that she was too scared, but I wondered if there was more. I looked at the picture on Young's computer. Shauna was a pretty girl with freckles and blank blue eyes. Her thick red blonde hair had been cropped close to her head with a knife or scissors and was now growing back. With all her freckles, she looked very Irish. Around her neck was a dog chain with a padlock attached to the ring that had been used to restrain her neck. But in the picture, with her inch-long hair and dog collar, she looked like a gutter punk, like any girl you might see in any university district. Young then showed me some photos of Rhodes in the 1980s that had come from his wife. In one, he relaxed on the grass in a park. The natural light brought his hair closer to the color I remembered, and, again, the side view heightened the key similarities, his cheekbone shape, glasses, the expression, but as I had learned from the echo chamber of Martinsburg's, memory is strange territory. By now papers and photographs were spread out all over the table, and Young was waiting for me to tell my story. Although I'd told it more in the preceding week than in the past 2 decades, I still wasn't used to doing it, and the nausea still came. One thing I always did, I told Young, was rifle through a trucker's cassette case as soon as we were out on the highway. This gave me a screen behind which to observe drivers when they thought I was distracted. It allowed me to pretend not to hear scary red flag comments so I could act dumb and get away later, and this is what I was doing that day, going through a tape case, chatting like an idiot and watching the driver, which is why I saw him change. I told Young about the Laughing Death Society. He'd never heard the phrase. I asked about the knife. Every trucker I ever met had a gun, so the knife seemed significant. He said a gun was about control but a knife is personal. I'd seen the page from Regina's little notebook on which Rhodes had drawn a picture of a gun and a huge dagger dripping blood next to the words "Ricky is a dead man." So was the trucker I met a true psychopath? I asked. What I find interesting is that he told you about the body of the girl and talked about the Laughing Death Society while he was still driving. You were not under his control. This tells me that he liked manipulating through terror. That it turned him on, just like Rhodes. But a real serial killer wouldn't have let me go, right? I asked. Maybe he didn't think you'd run. Even at the time, I'd wondered if my running was part of the game. Rhodes was a great lover of games. His favorite book was Games People Play, wherein each social encounter is treated as a transaction or game. One game in the book is called Courtroom. Another is called Beat Me Daddy, another Frigid Woman. In that one, driven by penis envy, a woman's inner child taunts a man into seducing her so that she can be freed from guilt for her own sadistic fantasies. Games People Play was a Bible for Rhodes. He talked about it frequently and applied its ideas. In a letter to his wife on the subject of psychological games, he wrote, "I always told you there were 3 things you could do: play, pass, or run." The phrase play, pass, run is used twice in the letter. Reading it, I found it hard not to hear the man telling me to run. The more I learned about Rhodes, the more I saw parallels between us. While I was hitchhiking, he was driving. And while I was getting more adept at survival, he was getting more adept at killing. On the table in front of Young was a snapshot of Regina Walters that I hadn't seen, taken not very long before she was abducted. In it, she's sitting in the back seat of a car. The sun is coming down on her long hair, and she's laughing. She looks like any other skinny kid just out of middle school. She looks happy. The picture was given to Young by Regina's mom. Initially, agents had disagreed over whether the young girl on Rhodes's film was Regina. It was Agent Young who recognized the small gap in Regina's teeth and noticed that a few freckles were in the same place. Young pulled out one last picture and slid it across to me. The photo was of a beautiful young girl, possibly Native American. She was on the end of the roll with Regina, he said. She's shown sitting in Rhodes's truck wearing a gray hoodie. Her eyes are partly closed, as if she's stoned or sleepy. Rhodes must have just picked her up, because he hasn't cut her hair yet. It is glossy black and long. No one knows who she is. On the phone, Agent Robert F. Lee was civil and to the point but not overtly warm. I arrived at his door melting in the 100-degree heat. He welcomed me into his spacious living room. Tall and square-jawed, Lee looked like he could probably still tackle a bank robber. Behind him was a shoulder-high pink plastic castle. "Granddaughter," he said. On the couch beside me was a large pillow with the FBI seal. "That's from my old SWAT jacket." He grinned. "They don't use that emblem now. Looks too much like a target." The question of what you do with your old SWAT jacket when you retire had never entered my mind. Clearly the answer is, make a throw pillow. I got the sense Lee appreciated brevity, so I dispensed with small talk and went straight to my questions, but he stopped me. "I just want you to know," he said, looking me squarely in the eye, "that what Rhodes did to women, he did to women. You didn't do it?" Everything I expected from Bob Lee changed in that moment. I had not told him or anyone else how I felt about failing to go to the cops. These were my private feelings. The idea that I might have been responsible for what happened to girls like Regina was devastating, and Lee's directness startled me. It was a raw moment. So I told him the truth, which I had not told others, that I didn't say anything because I didn't think anyone would believe me. "Well," said Lee, sitting back after I finished, "you're probably right. Look at Lisa Pennell." Pennell was the woman chained into Rhodes's truck when they arrested him in Arizona. When rescued, She was wearing fuzzy lion slippers, talking secret prisons and being on a mission to see the president, just the kind of testimony that makes most detectives stop taking notes, since they're looking at someone who can't stand trial. Her statement was videotaped the night she was freed from Rhodes's truck. Lee still uses the tape when he trains police detectives in interrogation. He shows it and asks what they think is going on. Most say she's a prostitute and that it's a transaction gone bad. Between Pennell and Rhodes, it's Rhodes they believe. Of course, Lee says, Lisa was talking all sorts of crazy stuff. Microchips in her brain. Holes in the ozone layer. She was wearing those slippers, but she was telling the truth. I had a vision of Lisa Pennell as a truck stop collie roaming the back lots in her denim skirt and fuzzy slippers with an ozone hole for a halo. She would be easy to dismiss. Rhodes intentionally chose women who lacked credibility. Sometimes, as with Shauna Holtz, the girl who had escaped in the brewery, the sense of not being credible was internalized. Lee told me that the final lines of Holtz's police statement read, "I don't see any good in filing charges. It's just going to be my word against his. If there was any evidence, I would file. I would file charges and sue him." It took me a second to understand those last sentences. What evidence was she lacking? She was found running naked, screaming down a street in Houston with DNA all over her body, her head and pubic hair shaved, still with his chain around her neck. How could she lack evidence? But I thought about what she'd said, it would just be my word against his, which was clearly followed by the unvoiced thought, and who is going to believe me? I could easily imagine my own teenage voice whispering those same words. The more I learned about Rhodes, the more I saw parallels between us. It wasn't lost on me that while I was hitchhiking and he was driving, we would both have struggled with some of the same challenges: sleep deprivation and the hypnotic dullness of going through identical locations over and over, a world constructed of boredom and violence. And while I was getting more adept at survival, he was very likely getting more adept at killing. We both had our own systems, our own rituals, and our own beliefs about what people were really like and how they acted under pressure. I'd put off writing Rhodes, mostly because I didn't want him to write me back. The time had come to do it anyway. Mark Young said Rhodes likes to feel like an expert and that I should ask him to educate me, so while writing my letter I used permissive language, saying I wanted him to teach me what I did right and what I did wrong when I was traveling. Knowing the capacity of his sadism made this unbearable. Rhodes didn't live a double life as much as a shadowed one. There's a picture of him in leather and chains that floats around the internet. It's actually from a Halloween party in Houston where he went as a slave, led on a chain by his wife, who was dressed as a dominatrix. Deborah Davis and Rhodes met in the early 80s at a Houston bar called Chip Kickers. Rhodes was dressed that night as an airline pilot, and it was months before Davis found out he wasn't one. The remarkable thing is that when she did, she didn't dump him. But Rhodes was cunning and highly charismatic. When the FBI extradited him to Illinois, he was able to get a phone number off a waitress while shackled hand and foot and wearing an orange prison suit. This obviously doesn't recommend the waitress's judgment, but at least some of the credit has to go to Rhodes. I finally got to Davis through Agent Young. He sent me a text just as I was leaving Texas saying that Debbie was ready to talk. I called as soon as I landed. Today, Davis lives in College Station, Texas, and her kids, the product of a previous marriage, are grown. She occasionally speaks on domestic violence at conferences and in classrooms at AM. She's tried to put the years with Rhodes behind her but still gets letters from him sporadically. Sometimes they're threatening, sometimes cajoling, but always manipulative. According to her, in the summer of 1985, Rhodes was driving for a trucking company based in Georgia that has an office right on I-95. I ran my story past her. When I got to the part about the sudden switch in his behavior, she got excited. "That's him. That's exactly like him," she said. She also said Rhodes often left his gun at home in the beginning and could have used a knife. There were other points where she saw similarities and would say, "That sounds like Bob," but these were less emphatic, and it was hard to tell what she really thought. Like Young and Lee, she had never heard of the Laughing Death Society, and since it had featured so strongly in my experience, I thought it salient. "Don't you think that fact starts to rule him out?" "Oh no, not at all," she said. Bob was fascinated by secret societies. Davis mentioned the case of Colleen Stan, a 21-year-old hitchhiker who had been kidnapped in 1977 by a couple who tortured her and kept her as a sex slave for 7 years while she slept in a box under their bed. Eventually she was left unbound. They kept her from running away by convincing her that a secret society called the Company would find her and bring her back. Bob was obsessed with how they used an imaginary secret society to keep her from running away, Davis said. It made sense. As a true sexual sadist, Rhodes would have been interested in a level of submission requiring no chains. He'd told Shauna Holtz to sit there and be a good girl. Regina Walters had been seen in Chicago standing freely outside his truck in a public place. "Do you remember what he was wearing?" Davis asked quietly. She was the only person who asked me this, and of course I did. Or rather, I remember what he was not wearing. He was not wearing jeans. He was not wearing a t-shirt. He was not wearing flannel. His clothes were gray or blue, but that may have been the light. Deborah told me that Bob always wore matching Dickies, usually dark blue. He liked people to think he was in uniform, she said. The airline pilot's outfit came to mind. "Do you remember what his cab looked like?" "Meticulously clean." "That sure sounds like Bob. When I first saw his apartment, I thought I'd walked into the showroom of a furniture store. Even in jail, his shirt and pants were always ironed and pressed." In Martinsburg, West Virginia, where the truck stop should be, is a massive Walmart stretching flat and endless along a parking lot the size of a lake. 5 years ago, the truck stop was demolished along with its restaurant. The only thing they neglected to take down is a website with the words Martinsburg Travel Center of America flashing like a beacon online. The whole thing seemed so uncanny. Everywhere I looked, evidence of these girls was disappearing. I hadn't been able to get a copy of Shauna Holtz's police report because I was told there was no official suspect. Lisa Pennell's full statement, it turned out, had been destroyed for file space. Now the whole Martinsburg truck stop had been swallowed by a Walmart supercenter. I knew from talking to the Martinsburg police that the truck stop had been under the jurisdiction of the Berkeley County Sheriff. I called the office. A chipper recorded voice told me to press 1 for TAS, press 2 for guns, all other callers stay on the line. I finally spoke to a woman and asked if they had a homicide record for a girl who may have been found in the Martinsburg truck stop during the summer of 1985. "We don't have any records," she told me. I thought she meant digitized. "I can come down," I said. "We don't have any records." In the 1990s, the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department's computer crashed and burned. The paper records had been destroyed for file space, and so nothing from the 1980s remained. I asked to speak to any senior officer who might have been there at the time. She told me there was only one and he had gone fishing. I spent a week on the road in Appalachia, visiting truck stops, interviewing the older truckers and waitresses. At first, I would ask about the girl in the dumpster, but no one had heard of her, so I asked if there had ever been any women found in truck stops. Wherever I went, I was told nothing like that ever happened, which was remarkable given the numbers of bodies the FBI had tracked over the past 30 years. The newspapers were equally silent. It seems our profound fascination with serial killers is matched by an equally profound lack of interest in their victims. One library archivist explained that I was looking for the kind of news nobody wanted to read. "The girl," he said, "wasn't one of our own. She was a drifter." I'd never heard the word drifter used in earnest. It touched a nerve I didn't know I had. I had been a drifter. If what he said was true, The trail I was on had disappeared into a field. Out of desperation I made one last attempt and swung by a smaller truck stop in Hancock, Maryland. I spoke to a woman who had worked there a long time and told her about the dead hitchhiker while she fingered the gold cross on her neck and listened. Had she ever heard about it? I asked. She shook her head, then her eyes clouded some. Wait a minute. There was that one girl. She was a prostitute. They found her near a dumpster behind the restaurant at the Gateway Travel Plaza in Breezewood. She had a stocking down her throat, I think. That was way back in the early 70s, though. It wasn't the early 70s, it was 1987, and the woman killed was 19-year-old LaMonica Cole. I found her in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette later that night. She had been strangled at Breezewood. Another prostitute had been grabbed there as well, in 2006, but was found farther down the road with her throat slit. Neither of these women were the one I was looking for, but a sentence in the article caught my attention. It said there had been a string of prostitute murders in truck stops in the area beginning in June of 1985, which was right on the edge of my time frame. The next morning, I drove to the Gateway Travel Plaza in Breezewood, Pennsylvania. I thought that maybe in a truck stop where known murders had occurred, people would be more forthcoming. Maybe they would remember something the others hadn't. I parked in front of the Family Travel Plaza, then walked back past a sign that read trucks only. The store for professional drivers was clean and quiet. I asked around until I found someone who had been there in 1985. It was a woman, probably in her mid-50s. She came over and gave me an open smile. I asked her the same questions I was asking everybody. Did you ever hear about a hitchhiker in a dumpster? No, she said. Did you ever hear of anything like that at all, in other times, any other bodies of women found along this stretch of I-70? I was in the one place where I knew for certain women had been found, one less than 100 yards away from where she was standing. No, she said, I never heard of anything like that anywhere. I remember being in the woods off I-95. I only ran about 100 yards before I turned and hid, because I didn't know if I was being chased. I crouched on netted twigs and breathed into my shirt to muffle the sound. Listening to her, it occurred to me that this investigation of mine wasn't a detective novel. It was a ghost story. The prisms of Regina Walters, Shauna Holtz, and Lisa Pennell refracted into a set of icons, one in the back seat of a car laughing as she leans on the headrest, one with the shorn red gold hair and an expression of resilience, one slightly crazy and ready to fight, each casting her own light, each a hologram of girlhood. Recently, the New Jersey State Supreme Court handed down a statement on memory, describing it as complex and often unreliable. The ruling went on to question the admissibility of eyewitness testimony. Human memory is not like a video recording, they said. And they're right. It's more like a set of still photos. I remember coming down through the Blue Ridge Mountains in a truck with its brakes on fire and dropping over Chester Gap in the middle of the night when it was still hot and the air was loud with the chirping of bugs. I remember sitting in the drizzle in a truck while the crime scene tape was strung around a dumpster. I remember driving around Ohio howling along with Bruce Springsteen and buzzed out of my brain on Diet Cokes and being sad that the ride ended because it was a safe one and I had almost been able to be myself for a second, but that second had passed. I remember a fuel island in the blue morning light and a driver with a white shirt that stood out like a flag, and taking the turn back east, then south, and a gray day just before a storm so pressurized my ears hurt. And I remember being in the woods off I-95. I only ran about 100 yards before I turned and hid, because I didn't know if I was being chased and needed to see. I crouched on netted twigs and breathed into my shirt to muffle the sound. The woods were blue in the gray light, which was either dusk or a coming storm. At the center of everything was my own breath. The birds went silent, and I didn't know what it meant. I watched the truck idle on the side of the road until it finally pulled off. One snowy night several months later, I was hitchhiking through Amherst, Massachusetts, and a car full of students from Hampshire College picked me up and let me stay with them. In the morning, they talked me into applying to the college. I was accepted, and that provided a thin strip of pride on which to stand while I made contact with my family. My mother was happy to pay for school. Being 16 and in college is an easier thing to talk about. It was a solution that worked for both of us and looked like redemption but didn't last. The dissonance between my emotional world and the one around me was still too great, and soon I left again, but in a more sanctioned way. I hitchhiked in Europe and settled in Vienna for a few years. I lived among artists in the Lower East Side squats. These are narratives we know. Unlike those of other young women on the road, my story was now recognizable. When I got home from West Virginia, a letter from Rhodes was waiting. It said he would see me if I promised never to say that I had seen him or what had passed between us. It was just the kind of promise a sexual predator or child molester would try to extract. He also wanted $500. I wrote him back and told him that journalistic standards wouldn't allow me to pay for interviews. I expected that to be the end of it, but I got another letter. Young was right. Rhodes liked to think of himself as an expert, and now Rhodes suggested he be paid as one. But an expert in what? I thought, killing. At the bottom of the yellow legal paper, scrawled in all caps, he wrote, "It wasn't me." I looked at the letter. He may be right, but certainly not because he's innocent. I imagined for a moment flying to Illinois. I go through the paperwork, get fingerprinted, and led through a channel of airlock doors into a room with him. He's there with his neatly pressed shirt and colossal arrogance. We do the interview, but I don't take notes. It doesn't matter what he says. After all, it's just going to be his word against mine. And who's going to believe him? That's where my fantasy ends, in a game of who is credible now. The same week that I got the letter from Rhodes, the senior officer from the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department who had been fishing returned. He said that no girls had ever been found in a dumpster at the Martinsburg, West Virginia, truck stop, and I had no reason not to believe him. One story Deborah Davis told still haunts me. She was on a trip with her husband, Bob, the last she ever took in his truck. They were heading west on I-10 and stopped somewhere in Arizona at a busy truck stop. By the restaurant door was a young woman with a baby, trying to get a ride. Deborah said she looked about 18 or 19 and desperate. Deborah wanted to give her money or do something. Her own sister had been on the street, and she was overwhelmed by the woman at the door and didn't want to just walk away. Rhodes saw what Deborah was looking at. He came around behind her and grabbed her shoulders. He turned her slowly toward the girl and pointed. "You see that, Debbie?" he whispered in her ear. "She's one of the invisible people." Next story. The unbelievable tale of a fake hitman, a kill list, a darknet vigilante, and a murder. I did not know Brian Anjoraj. I had never met him, talked to him, or encountered him online. In ordinary circumstances, I would have never heard of his death, more than 6,500 kilometers away. Yet in late June 2018, a message arrived in my inbox. Its subject read, "Suicide, or murder." The email contained a link to a web page showing unequivocally that someone wanted Brian dead. On May 29, a person calling themselves Tunbib had exchanged messages with someone they thought was a mafia capo renting hitman on the dark web. Tunbib had sent a picture of Anjoraj in a suit, lifted from a school yearbook, and an address in Indiana where Anjoraj, a soldier, who usually resided at a military base in Kentucky, would stay for a few days. He will only be in location from June 1, 2018 June 11, Tunbib wrote. They paid about $5,500 in Bitcoin for the hit. The day after, Tunbib started chasing the presumed capo for an answer, which took some more time to arrive. "I will assign an operative to your job and it will be done in about a week, is this okay? I will get back to you shortly with an estimated date," the capo wrote on June 1. Tunbib never answered. On June 9, Brian N. George was found with a fatal gunshot wound to the head, near a baseball field in Clarksville, Indiana. His death was recorded as a suicide. There are no hitmen in this story. There are no sharply dressed assassins screwing silencers onto their Glocks, no operatives assigned, nor capos directing them. There is a website, though, a succession of websites, to be precise, where all those things are made out to be true. Some people fall for it. Looking for a hitman, they download Tor, a browser that uses encryption and a complex relaying system to ensure anonymity, and allows them to access the dark web, where the website exists. Under false names, the website's users complete a form to request a murder. They throw hundreds of bitcoins into the website's digital purse. The website's admin is scamming them, no assassination is ever executed. The admin would dole out a hail of lies for why hits had been delayed, and keep the bitcoins. But, elsewhere, someone called Chris Monteiro has been disrupting the website's operations for years, triggering its admin's wrath. In 2016, 2 years before sending me the email about N. George, Monteiro was just a guy writing wikis. A tall man in his 30s with thick sable hair, a short beard and deep-set, dark eyes, Monteiro is a man of weird pastimes. By day, he worked as a computer system administrator for a London-based firm. By night, he turned on a 6-screen desktop computer in his South London flat and spent hours plumbing the depth of the internet. He called himself a cybercrime and niche topic internet researcher. He was into transhumanism, the internet-based movement advocating for human enhancement and immortality. He gave talks about the politics of sci-fi, using a slightly slurred patter. He knew a great deal about credit card fraud. But his passion was the dark web. This was the perfect environment for scammers, impenetrable to search engines and rife with illegality. Online forums crawled with references to sentient apes lurking in the dark web, live-streaming websites showing people being slaughtered in red rooms, or dark web pages revealing the secret of the Illuminati. This weird fringe of the internet, it's one of the toughest areas to seek truth, Monteiro says. In 2015, Monteiro started running the r/deepweb subreddit, a front row on the day-to-day happenings of the online netherworld. He documented his findings on his blog, Pirate.London, and on online encyclopedias, such as Wikipedia and anti-pseudoscience website Rational Wiki. He made it his mission to kill urban legends. He contributed to Wikipedia's articles on the dark web and darknet market, and created Rational Wiki's pages about red rooms and runaway ace. He also wrote Rational Wiki's article about internet assassination. The rumor that you could hire a contract killer on the dark web in exchange for Bitcoin had been around since the early 2010s. That was because, unlike snuff movies and Evil Ace, hitman for hire services were ubiquitous on the dark web. Some were structured as prediction markets, with users crowdfunding the assassination of VIPs and politicians, or they could be catering to the private grudge bearer wanting to book a hit via private chat. Monteiro's research suggested all such websites to be either harmless trolling or scams designed to rob people of their bitcoins. He could find no evidence of anybody ever being killed by a hitman hired online, nor of any hitman working online. He wrote this all on Rational Wiki, with footnotes. Then, on February 20, 2016, an anonymous user made an edit to the Internet Assassination article. The edit, Monteiro says, added something to the effect of all assassination sites are scams, except for Besa Mafia, which is real, appending a link to a dark website. The edit was permanently deleted by Rational Wiki's admins at Monteiro's urging, but a subsequent modification by the same user remains in the edit history. Another site is Besa Mafia, a marketplace where hitmen can sign up to provide their services and where customer can order. The edit read. The site protects the customers with an escrow service that stores the Bitcoin until the job is completed. They also accept external escrows. Monteiro understood this to be shameless self-promotion. The people running Besa Mafia, whatever that was, had seemingly vandalized his finely crafted piece of wiki scholarship in order to shill for their assassination website. I went, "What the fuck is this shit?" he says. "This is not only nonsense, it's someone promoting a scam on my article." He fired up Tor and went to the Besa Mafia website. Ostensibly run by Albanian gangsters, Besa is Albanian for honor. It was littered with poor English, stock pictures of armed beefcakes, and a payment system that, far from protecting customers' Bitcoin, allowed whoever ran the website to easily snatch the funds. He wrote a scathing review of Besa Mafia on his blog, calling it a scam. A few days later, someone from Besa Mafia got in touch. "Hello, I am one of the admins of the Besa Mafia website on Deep Web SIC," the email read. "Would it be possible for us to pay for a true and honest positive review? Let me know if we can prove to you that we are legit." It was signed Yura. A back and forth exchange ensued. Monteiro gleefully bombarded Yura with questions, punching holes in the site's business model, security, and technical makeup. For Monteiro, it was obviously a scam. But, while Yura acknowledged the website's shortcomings, he maintained it was legitimate. He asked Monteiro to give Besa Mafia the benefit of the doubt. "We are open to suggestions, we will do our best to make it the best marketplace focusing on body harm revenge and property destruction," Yura wrote. As evidence, Yura offered to have someone of Monteiro's choice beaten up. He then proposed to pay a $50 monthly retainer to feature Besa Mafia banners on Monteiro's blog. When Monteiro declined both offers, Yura's tone became menacing. "Be neutral to our website," he wrote. "Unless you do that, we will pay some cheap freelancers to fill articles and submit posts and comments claiming you are undercover cop." Monteiro published the exchange in full on his blog, mocking Yura and Besa Mafia. Weeks later, someone left a comment, a link to a video. It started by showing an A4 sheet. Gang members for Besa Mafia on Deep Web, the sheet read. De-Education to Pirate London, April 10, 2016. There followed some 30 seconds of darkness, rustling, and metallic sounds. Finally, the camera turned towards a white car, engulfed in orange flames. The sheet was shown again, meters away from the blazing car. The video appeared to be a threat to whoever was running Pirate.London. Monteiro was horrified. He thought this was not the behavior of a scammer. Online con artists ignore people who call them out, he thought. They don't set cars on fire to defend their reputation. "I started questioning myself, had I pissed off a criminal organization," he says. "What the fuck had I got myself into?" The video prompted Monteiro to contact law enforcement. At London's Charing Cross police station, he told the officer behind the desk that he was a cybercrime researcher, specializing in drugs, fraud, and murder, and he wanted to report a darknet assassin threatening him with videos of flaming cars. "I just wanted to get this on the record," Monteiro recalls. The officer was perplexed. Weeks later, the case was passed on to the Metropolitan Police's cybersecurity unit, Falcon Team. Monteiro maintains that nothing came out of it. He says that the officer said that the car did not seem to have been destroyed in the UK and was therefore out of the Met's jurisdiction. Monteiro also attempted to contact the UK National Crime Agency, NCA, but, he would later realize, he mistyped the email address and the message was not delivered. The NCA doesn't send bounce-back notifications. Monteiro resolved to explore the Besa Mafia website himself. He created a customer account, calling himself Bodie McBoatface, and requested a hit on a fictional person he called Bob the Builder. In doing so, he spotted a way to gather intelligence on the website. Each message sent on the platform was assigned a unique numeric ID. By combining message IDs with the website's URL, Monteiro discovered that he could read every other user's messages. Exploiting this vulnerability, he downloaded Besa Mafia's entire message database and examined its archive. Sure enough, Besa Mafia was a scam. Every conversation followed an identical template. Customers submitted the details of the person they wanted killed and the method they preferred. For instance, a hit that looked like an accident would be more expensive. To prove they had the wherewithal to pay, they were required to make an advance Bitcoin transfer to a digital wallet, from which, the website assured, its clients would be able to withdraw their funds anytime. Euro would claim to take swift action. Before a period of prevarication, the hitman had been stopped for a traffic violation, or for illegal possession of a gun. A more professional assassin could be hired, but that would cost more Bitcoin. Some customers kept paying, as Euro led them on for months. Others requested a refund, which never came. Euro kept all the Bitcoin. But Besa Mafia was more than just any run-of-the-mill scam. Monteiro realized that it was a fully fledged fake news operation. Euro devoted a lot of energy to defending the website's credibility. A California-based person going by name John 2 had written to the website offering his services as an assassin. "I am broke, of course, and am looking for quick cash," John 2 wrote. "I have military training, U.S. Navy, ... Instead of taking him up on his offer, Euro had asked John 2 to make videos of burning cars to intimidate Monteiro and other critics. He then asked him to enact and video a fake murder, with the help of a friend and a replica gun. In the following months, several videos of balaclava-clad thugs firing guns and talking up Euro's assassination websites would pop up online. Next story. I am ready for the story of all the dead men who last saw his face. As I drank coffee and tried to frame questions in my mind, a crime reporter in Juarez was cut down beside his 8-year-old daughter as they sat in his car letting it warm up. This morning as I drove down here, a Toyota passed me with a bumper sticker that read, with a heart symbol, "I love love." This morning I tried to remember how I got to this rendezvous. I was in a distant city and a man told me of the killer and how he had hidden him. He said at first he feared him, but he was so useful. He would clean everything and cook all the time and get on his hands and knees and polish his shoes. I took him on as a favor, he explained. I said, "I want him. I want to put him on paper." And so I came. The man I wait for insists, "You don't know me. No one can forgive me for what I did." He has pride in his hard work. The good killers make a very tight pattern through the driver's door. They do not spray rounds everywhere in the vehicle, no, they make a tight pattern right through the door and into the driver's chest. The reporter who died received just such a pattern, 10 rounds from a 9mm, and not a single bullet came near his 8-year-old daughter. I wait. I admire craftsmanship. The first call comes at 9 o'clock and says to expect the next call at 10:05. So I drive 50 miles and wait. The call at 10:05 says to wait until 11:30. The call at 11:30 does not come, and so I wait and wait. Next door is a game store frequented by men seeking power over a virtual world. Inside the coffee shop, it is all calculated calm and everything is clean. I am in the safe country. I will not name the city, but it is far from Juarez and it is down by the river. At noon, the next call comes. We meet in a parking lot, our cars conjoined like cops with driver next to driver. I hand over some photographs. He quickly glances at them and then tells me to go to a pizza parlor. There he says we must find a quiet place because he talks very loudly. I rent a motel room with him. None of this can be arranged ahead of time because that would allow me to set him up. He glances at the photographs, images never printed in newspapers. He stabs his finger at a guy standing over a half-exposed body in a grave and says, "This picture can get you killed." I show him the photograph of the woman. She is lovely in her white clothes and perfect makeup. Blood trickles from her mouth, and the early morning light caresses her face. The photograph has a history in my life. Once I placed it in a magazine and the editor there had to field a call from a terrified man, her brother, who asked, "Are you trying to get me killed, to get my family killed?" I remember the editor calling me up and asking me what I thought the guy meant. I answered, exactly what he said. Now the man looks at her and tells me she was the girlfriend of the head of the Sicarios in Juarez, and the guys in charge of the cartel thought she talked too much. Not that she'd ever given up a load or anything, it was simply the fact that she talked too much. So they told her boyfriend to kill her, and he did. Or he would die. This is ancient ground. The term Sicario goes back to Roman Palestine, where a Jewish sect, the Sicarii, used concealed daggers, cc, in their murders of Romans and their supporters. He leans forward. Amado and Vicente, the two brothers who have successively headed the Juarez cartel, could kill you if they even thought you were talking, he says. These photographs can get you killed. Words can get you killed. And all this will happen and you will die, and the sentence will never have a subject, simply an object falling dead to the ground. I feel myself falling down into some kind of well, some dark place that hums beneath the workaday city, and in this place there is a harder reality and absolute facts. I have been living, I think, in a kind of fantasy world of laws and theories and logical events. Now I am in a country where people are murdered on a whim, and a beautiful woman is found in the dirt with blood trickling from her mouth, and then she is wrapped with explanations that have no actual connection to what happened. I have spent years getting to this moment. The killers, well, I have been around them before. Once I partied with 200 armed killers in a Mexican hotel for 5 days. But they were not interested in talking about their murders. He is. We will never see him coming. He is of average height, he dresses like a workman with sturdy boots and a knit cap. If he stood next to you in a checkout line, you would be unable to describe him 5 minutes later. Nothing about him draws attention. Nothing. He has very thick fingers and large hands. His face is expressionless. His voice is loud but flat. He lives beneath notice. That is part of how he kills. He says, Juarez is a cemetery. I have dug the graves for 250 bodies. I nod because I know what he means. The dead, the 250 corpses, are details, people he disappeared and put in holes in death houses. The city is studded with these secret tombs. Just today the authorities discovered a skeleton. From the rotted clothing, the experts peg the bones to be those of a 25-year-old man. He is one of a legion of dead hidden in Juarez. That is why I am here. I have spent 20 years now waiting for this moment and trying to avoid being buried in some hole. At that party long ago with the 200 gunmen, a Mexican federal cop wanted to kill me. He was stopped by the host, and so I continued on with my tattered life. But I have come to this room so that I can bring out my dead, the thousands who have been cut down on my watch. I have published 2 books on the slaughter of the city, reporting there from 1995, when murder in Juarez ran at 200 to 300 a year, until 2008, when 1,607 people were killed. And that is only the official tally. No one really keeps track of those who are taken and never heard from again. I am a prisoner of all this killing. We sit with a translator at a round wooden table, drapes closed. He says, everything I say stays in this room. I nod and continue making notes. That is how it begins. Nothing is to leave the room, even though I am making notes, and he knows I will publish what he says because I tell him that. We are entering a place neither of us knows. I can never repeat what he tells me, even though I tell him I will repeat it. Nothing must leave the room, even though he watches me write his words down in a black notebook. I do not even know his name, nor can I verify the particulars of what he tells me. But this killer has come to me with a pedigree, established through the hands that delivered him to me, a man who once used him, a former cartel member and leading state policeman who now has produced him as a favor. He tells me to feel the tricep on his right arm. It hangs down like a tire. Now, he says, feel my left arm. There is nothing there. He stands, puts a chokehold on me. He can snap my neck like a twig. Then he sits down again. I ask him how much he would charge to kill me. He gives me a cool appraisal and says, at the most, $5,000, probably less. You are powerless and you have no connections to power. No one would come after me if I killed you. We are ready to begin. I ask him how he became a killer. He smiles and says, my arm grew. He takes a sheet of paper, draws 5 vertical lines, and writes in the spaces in black ink, childhood, police, narco, God. The 4 phases of his life. Then he scratches out what he has written until there is nothing but solid ink on the page. He cannot leave tracks. He cannot quite give up the habits of a lifetime. I reach for the paper but he snatches it back. And laughs. I think at both of us. When I believed in the Lord, he says, I ran from the dead. I had a normal childhood, he insists. He will not tolerate the easy explanation that he is the product of abuse. We were very poor, very needy, he continues. We came to the border from the south to survive. My people went into the maquilas. I went to a university. I didn't have a father who treated me badly. My father worked, a working man. He started at the maquila at 6 p.m. and worked until 6 a.m., 6 days a week. The rest of the time he was sleeping. My mother had to be both father and mother. She cleaned houses in El Paso 3 days a week. There were 12 children to feed. He pauses here to see if I understand. He will not be a victim, not of poverty, not of parents. He became a killer because it was a way to live, not because of trauma. His eyes are clear and intelligent. And cold. Once, he says, my father took me and 3 of my brothers to the circus. We brought our own chilies and cookies so we did not have to spend money. That was the happiest day of my life. And the only time I went somewhere with my father. But now we turn to the time he worked for the devil. He is in high school when the state police recruit him and his friends. They get $50 to drive cars across the bridge to El Paso, where they park them and walk away. They never know what is in the cars, nor do they ever ask. After the delivery, they are taken to a motel where cocaine and women are always available. He drops out of the university because he has no money. And then the police dip into his set of friends who have been moving drugs for them to El Paso. And send them to the police academy. In his own case, because he is only 17, the mayor of Juarez has to intervene to get him into the academy. We were paid about 150 pesos a month as cadets, he says, but we got a bonus of $1,000 a month that came from El Paso. Every day, liquor and drugs came to the academy for parties. Each weekend, we bribed the guards and went to El Paso. I was sent to the FBI school in the United States and taught how to detect drugs, guns, and stolen vehicles. The training was very good. After graduation, no one in the various departments really wanted him because he was too young, but U.S. law enforcement insisted he be given a command position. And so he was. I commanded 8 people, he continues. 2 were honest and good. The other 6 were into drugs and kidnapping. 2 units of the state police in Juarez specialized in kidnapping, and his was one such unit. The official assignment of both units was to stop kidnapping. In reality, one unit would kidnap the person and then hand the victim over to the other unit to be killed, a procedure less time-consuming than guarding the victim until the ransom was paid. Sometimes they would feign discovering the body a few days after the abduction. That was the orderly Juarez he once knew. Then in July 1997, Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the head of the Juarez cartel, died. This was an earthquake. Order broke down. The payments to the state police from an account in the United States ended. And each unit had to fend for itself. I have no real idea how and when I became a sicario, he says. At first, I picked up people and handed them over to killers. And then my arm began to grow because I strangled people. I could earn $20,000 a killing. Before Carrillo's death, cocaine was not easy for him to get in Juarez because if you cut open a kilo, you died. So he and his crew would cross the bridge to El Paso and score. He is by now running a crew of kidnappers and killers. He is working for a cartel that stores tons of cocaine in Juarez warehouses, and he must enter the United States to get his drugs. That changed after Carrillo's death. Soon he was deep into cocaine, amphetamines, and liquor and would stay up for a week. He also acquired his skill set: strangulation, killing with a knife, killing with a gun, car-to-car barrages, torture, kidnapping, and simply disappearing people and burying them in holes. He mentions the case of Victor Manuel Oropeza, a doctor who wrote a column for the newspaper. He linked the police and the drug world. He was knifed to death in his office in 1991. The people who killed him taught me. Sicarios are not born, they are made. He became a new man in a new world. In the eyes of the US government, the Mexican drug industry is very organized, its cartels structured like corporations, perhaps with periodic meetings. But on the ground with the Sicario, there is no structure. He kills all over Mexico, he works with various groups, but he never knows how things are linked, he never meets the people in charge, and he never asks any questions. And so he visits the various outposts of this underground empire, but does so without any map and with no directory of the management. He is in a cell and can betray only the handful of people in his cell. He will never even be certain which cartel organization pays him. He tells me of a leader, a deputy of Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, the current head of the Juarez cartel, a man full of hate, a man who even hates his own family. He would cut up a baby in front of the father in order to make the father talk. He says the man is a beast. He is drifting now, going back in time to a place he has left, the killing ground where he would slaughter and then drop 5 grand in a single evening. He remembers when outsiders would try to move into Juarez and commandeer the plaza, the crossing. For a while, the organization killed them and hung them upside down. Then, for a spell, they offered Colombian neckties, the throat cut, tongue dangling through the slit. There was a spate of necklacing, the burned body found with a charred stub where the head had been, the metal cords of the tire simply blackened hoops embracing the corpse. He has lived like a god and been the destroyer of worlds. The room is still, so very still, the television a blank eye, the walls sedated with beige, the exhaust fan purring. His arms at rest on the wood table, everything solid and calm. But his face is fear. Not fear of me but of something neither of us can define, a death machine with no apparent driver. There is no headquarters for him to avoid, no boss to keep an eye peeled for. He has been green-lighted, and now anyone who knows of the contract can kill him on sight and collect the money. The name of his killer is Legion. He can hide, but that only buys a little time, and he is allowed only one serious mistake and then he is dead. His hunters can be patient. He is like a winning lottery ticket, and one day they will collect. The death machine careens through the streets, guns at the ready, always rolling, no real route, randomly prowling and looking for fresh blood. The day comes and goes, and 10 die. Or more. No one can really keep count any longer, and besides, some of the bodies simply vanish and cannot be tallied. He stares at me. He says, "I want to talk about God." I say, "We'll get to that." He is the killer and he does not know who is in charge. Just as he usually did not know the reason for the murders he committed. He will die. Someone will kill him. No one will really notice. No place is safe, he knows that fact. A family in the States owed some money on a deal, so a 14-year-old son and his friend were snatched and taken back over. The man killed them with a broken bottle, then drank a glass of their blood. He knows things like that. Because of what he has done. He knows that crossing the bridge is easy because he has crossed it so many times. He knows all the searches and all the security claims at the border are a joke because he has moved with his weapons back and forth. He knows that everything has been penetrated, that nothing can be trusted, not even the solid feel of the wooden table. The rough edge of burning wood fires at those shacks of the poor, the acrid smell of burned powder flowing from a spent brass cartridge, an old copper kettle with oil boiling and fresh pork swirling into the crispness of carnitas, the caravan of cars passing in the night, windows tinted, and then the entire procession turns and comes by again, and you look but do not stare, because if they pause, however briefly, they will take you with them to the death that waits, the holes being dug each morning in the brown dirt of the Campo Santo, the graves a guess and a promise gaping up like hungry mouths for the kills of the morning and afternoon and evening, and 4 people sit outside their house at night and the cars come by, the bullets bark, 2 die soon after the barrage, and the other 2 are scooped up by family who drive them from hospital to hospital through the dark houses because no healers will take them in. The killers have a way of following their prey into the emergency rooms in order to finish the work. His arms are on the wooden table as Juarez wafts across our faces, and we do not speak of this fact. I cannot explain the draw of the city that gives death but makes everyone feel life. Nor can he. So we do not speak but simply note this fact with our silence. We are both trying to return to some person we imagine we once were, the person before the killings, before the torture, before the fear. He wants to live without the power of life and death, and wonders if he can endure being without the money. I want to obliterate memory, to be in a world where I do not know of sicarios and think of dinner and not of fresh corpses decorating the calles. We have followed different paths and wound up in the same plaza, and now we sit and talk and wonder how we will ever get home. I crossed the river about 20 years ago. I can't be exact about the date because I am still not sure what crossing really means, except that you never come back. I just know I crossed and now I stumble on some distant shore. It is like killing. I ask him, tell me about your first killing, and he says he can't remember, and I know that he is not telling the truth and I know that he is not lying. Sometimes you cannot reach it. You open that drawer, and your hand is paralyzed and you cannot reach it. It is right in front of you but still you cannot reach it, and so you say you don't remember. He has a green pen, a notebook. He has printouts from the internet, mainly things about me. He has spent 10 hours researching me, he says. Like so many pilgrims, he is in the market for a witness who can understand his life. He has decided I will suffice. He is at ease now. Before, his body was hunched over, shoulders looming, those trained and talented hands. He wore a skull cap that hid his hair and he seldom smiled. Now he is a different person, a man who laughs, his body almost fluid, his eyes no longer dead black coals but beaming and dancing as he speaks. We are not monsters, he explains. We have education, we have feelings. I would leave torturing someone, go home and have dinner with my family, and then return. You shut off parts of your mind. It is a kind of work, you follow orders. For some time, his past life has been dead to him, something he shut off. But now it is back. He thinks God has sent me to convey his lessons to others. Like all of us, he wants his life to have meaning, and I am to write it down and send it out into the world. Of course, he must be careful. When he left the life 2 years ago, the organization put a $250,000 contract on his life. He does not know what the contract currently is, but it is unlikely to be lower. At the moment, God is protecting him and his family, he knows this, but still he must be careful. I don't do bad things anymore, he says, but I can't stop being careful. It is a habit I have. That's how I ensure security for myself. They killed me twice, you know. And he lifts his shirt to show me 2 groupings of bullet holes in his belly from separate times when he took rounds from an AK-47. I was in a coma for a while, he continues. I weighed 290 pounds when I went into the hospital, a narco hospital, and I shrank to 120 pounds. It was all a mistake. The organization believed he had leaked information on the killing of a newspaper columnist, but it turned out the actual informant had been the guy paid to tap phones. So he was killed and they apologized to me and paid for a month's vacation in Mazatlan with women, drugs, and liquor. I was about 24 then. He sips his coffee. He is ready to begin. He notes that when I asked him earlier about his first killing, he said he couldn't really remember because he used so much cocaine and drank so much alcohol back then. That was a lie. He remembers quite well. The first person I killed, well, we were state policemen doing a patrol, he says. They called my partner on his cell phone and told him the person we were looking for was in a mall. So we went and got him and put him in the car. Two guys get in the car, identify the target, and leave. They are people paying for the murder. He and his partner use the police code for a homicide. When the number 39 is spoken, it means to kill the person. The guy they have picked up has lost 10 kilos of cocaine, drugs that belong to the other two men. His partner drives, and he gets in back with the victim. The target says that he gave the drugs to someone else. At that moment his partner says, 39, and so he instantly kills him. It was like automatic, he explains. They drive around for hours with the body and they drink. Finally, they go to an industrial park, pry off a manhole, and throw the body in the sewer. For his work, he gets an ounce of coke, a bottle of whiskey, and $1,000. They told me I had passed the test. I was 18. He checks into a hotel and does cocaine and drinks for 4 days. The state police didn't care if you were drunk. If you really wanted to be left alone, you gave the dispatcher 100 pesos and then they would not call you at all. After this baptism, he moves into kidnapping and enters a new world. Soon he is traveling all over Mexico. He is working for the police, but whenever an assignment comes up he simply gets leave. A few of the kidnappings he participates in are merely snatches for ransom. But hundreds of others have a different goal. They would say, take this guy. He lost 200 kilos of marijuana and didn't pay. I would pick him up in my police car, I would drop him off at a safe house. A few hours later, I would get a call that said there is a dead body to get rid of. This was at the start of my career, after I passed my test. For about 3 years I traveled all over Mexico. Once I even went to Quintana Roo. I always had an official police car. Sometimes we used planes, but usually we drove. We got through military checkpoints by showing an official document that said we were transporting a prisoner. The document would have a fake case number. He becomes a tour guide to an alternate Mexico, a place where citizens are transported from safe house to safe house without any records left for courts and agencies. When he arrives someplace, the person has already been kidnapped. He simply picks him up for shipment. Controlling them was easy because they were terrified. When they saw that it was an official car and when I said, "Don't worry, everything will be fine. You'll be back with your family. If you don't cooperate, we'll drug you and put you in the trunk and I can't guarantee then that you'll see the end of the journey." The drive is fueled by coke. He and his partner always dress well for such work. They get 5 or 6 new suits from the organization every few months. They are seldom home but seem to live in various safe houses and are supplied with food and drugs. But no women. This is all business. They hardly ever do police work, they are working full-time for narcos. This is his real home for almost 20 years, a second Mexico that does not exist officially and that coexists seamlessly with the government. In his many transports of human beings to bondage, torture, and death, he is never interfered with by the authorities. He is part of the government, the state policeman with 8 men under his command. But his key employer is the organization, which he assumes is the Juarez cartel, but he never asks since questions can be fatal. They give him a salary, a house, a car, and standing. He estimates that 85% of the police worked for the organization. But, even on a clear day, he could barely glimpse the cartel that employed him. He is in a cell, and above him is a boss, and above that boss is a region of power he never visits or knows. He also estimates that out of every 100 human beings he transports, maybe 2 make it back to their former lives. The rest die. Slowly, very slowly. In each safe house, there would be anywhere from 5 to 15 kidnap victims. They wore blindfolds all the time, and if their blindfolds slipped they were killed. At times, they would be put in a chair facing a television, their eyes would be briefly uncovered, and they would watch videos of their children going to school, their wives shopping, the family at church. They would see the world they had left behind, and they would know this world would vanish, be destroyed, if they did not come through with the money. The neighbors never complained about the safe houses. They would see all the police cars parked in front and remain silent. They might owe $1 million, but when the work was finished they would pay everything, their entire fortunes, and maybe, just maybe, the wife would be left with a house and a car. People would be held for up to 2 years. They were beaten after they were fed, and so they learned to associate food with pain. Once in a great while, the order would come down to release a prisoner. They would be taken to a park blindfolded, told to count to 50 before they opened their eyes. Even at this moment of freedom, they would weep because they no longer believed it possible for them to be released and still expected to be murdered. Sometimes, he says, prisoners who had been held for months would be allowed to remove the blindfolds so they could clean the safe house. After a while, they began to think they were part of the organization, and they identified with the guards who beat them. They would even make up songs about their experiences as prisoners, and they would tell us of all the fine things they would make sure we got when they were released. Sometimes after beating them badly, we would send their families videos of them and they would be pleading, saying, "Give them everything." And then the order would come down and they would be killed. Payment to the organization would always be made in a different city from where the prisoner was held. Everything in the organization was compartmentalized. Often he would stay in a safe house for weeks and never speak to a prisoner or know who they were. It did not matter. They were products and he was a worker following orders. No matter how much the family paid, the prisoner almost always died. When the family had been sucked dry of money, the prisoner had no value. And besides, he could betray the organization. So death was logical and inevitable. He pauses in his account. He wants it understood that he is now similar to the prisoners he tortured and killed. He is outside the organization, he is a threat to the organization, and everyone who is no longer of use to the boss dies. He is now the floating man remembering when he was firmly anchored in his world. I want it understood, he says, that I had feelings when I was in the torture houses and people would be lying in their vomit and blood. I was not permitted to help them. He is calm as he says this. He alternates between asserting his humanity and explaining how he maintained a professional demeanor while he kidnapped, tortured, and killed people. He says he is feared now because he believes in God. Then he says he could make a good grouping on the target with his AK-47 at 800 yards. He would practice at military bases and police academies. He could get in using his police badge. The work, he insists, is not for amateurs. Take torture, you must know just how far to go. Even if you intend to kill the person in the end, you must proceed carefully in order to get the necessary information. They are so afraid, he explains, they are usually cooperative. Sometimes when they realize what is going to happen to them, they become aggressive. Then you take their shoes away, soak their clothes, and put a hot wire to each foot for 15 seconds. Then they understand that you are in charge and that you are going to get the information. You can't beat them too much because then they become insensitive to pain. I have seen people beaten so badly that you could pull out their fingernails with pliers and they wouldn't feel it. You handcuff them behind their backs, sit them in a chair facing a 100-watt bulb, and you ask them questions about their jobs, number, and age of children, all things you have researched and know the answer to. Every time they lie, you give them a jolt from an electric cattle prod. Once they realize they can't lie, you start asking them the real questions: how many loads have they moved to the US, who do they work for, and if they are not paying your boss, well, why? They will try by this point to answer everything. Then we beat them and let them rest. We show them those videos of their family. At this point, they will give up anything we ask for and even more. Now you have the advantage, and you use this new information to hit warehouses and steal loads, to round up other people they work with, and then you video their families and begin the process again. You know the families will not likely go to the police because they know the guy is in a bad business. But if they do tell the police, we instantly know because we work with the police. We're part of the anti-kidnapping unit. Sometimes the people kidnapped are killed instantly because, after we take their jewelry and cars, they are worthless. Such goods are divided up within the unit, among 5 to 8 people. The hardest thing is when you kill them because then you must dig a hole to bury them. There are 2 mistakes most people make. They don't pay whoever controls the plaza, the city. Or they dreamed of being bigger than the boss. But none of this really matters because he never asks why people are kidnapped, nor who they really are. They are simply product and he is simply a worker. Their screams are simply the background noise to the task at hand. Just as calming them or transporting them is simply part of the job. There is a second category of kidnapping, one he finds almost embarrassing. Someone's wife is having an affair with her personal trainer, so you pick up the trainer and kill him. Or a guy has a hot woman and some other guy wants her, so you kill the boyfriend to get the woman for him. I received my orders, he says, and I had to kill them. The bosses didn't know what the limits were. If they want a woman, they get her. If they want a car, they get it. They have no limits. He resents people who like to kill. They are not professional. Real sicarios kill for money. But there are people who kill for fun. People will say, I haven't killed anyone for a week. So they'll go out and kill someone. This kind of person does not belong in organized crime. They're crazy. If you discover such a person in your unit, you kill him. The people you really want to recruit are police or ex-police trained killers. All this is a sore point for him. The slaughter now going on in Juarez offends him because too many of the killings are done by amateurs, by kids imitating sicarios. He is appalled by the number of bullets used in a single execution. It shows a lack of training and skill. In a real hit, the burst goes right where the lock is on the door because such rounds will penetrate the driver's torso with a killing shot. Twice he was stymied by armored vehicles, but the solution is a burst of full-jacketed rounds in a tight pattern. This will gouge through the armor. A hit should take no more than a minute. Even his hardest jobs against armored cars took under 3 minutes. A real sicario, he notes, does not kill women or children. Unless the women are informants for the DEA or the FBI. Here, he must show me. A proper execution requires planning. First, the eyes study the target for days, usually at least a week. His schedule at home is noted, when he gets up, when he leaves for work, when he comes home, everything about his routines in his domestic life is recorded by the eyes. Then the mind takes over. He studies the man's habits in the city itself, his day at work, where he lunches, where he drinks, how often he visits his mistress and where she lives and what her habits are. Between the eyes and the mind a portrait is possible. Now there is a meeting of the crew, which is 6 to 8 people. There will be 2 police cars with officers and 2 other cars with sicarios. A street will be selected for the hit, one that can easily be blocked off. Timing will be carefully worked out, and the hit will take place within a half-dozen blocks of a safe house, an easy matter since there are so many in the city. He picks up a pen and starts drawing. The lead car will be police. Then will come a car full of sicarios. Then the car driven by the target. This is followed by another car of sicarios. And then, bringing up the rear, another police car. During the execution, the eyes will watch and the mind will man the radios. When the target enters the block selected for the murder, the lead police car will pivot and block the street, the first sicario will slow, the second car of sicarios behind the target will pull up beside him and shoot him, the final police car will block the end of the street. All this should take less than 30 seconds. One man will get out and give a coup de grace to the bullet-riddled victim. Then all will disperse. The car with the killers will go to the safe house and leave their vehicle in a garage. It will be taken to a garage owned by the organization, repainted, and then sold on one of the organization's lots. The killers themselves will pick up a clean car at the safe house, and often they return to the scene of the murder to see that everything has gone well. He sketches this with exactness, each rectangle neatly drawn to delineate a car, and the target's car is filled in and blooms on the page with green ink. Arrows indicate how each vehicle will move. It is like an equation on a chalkboard. He leans back from his toil and on his face is almost the look of a job well done. This is how a real sicario performs his work. In the ideal hit, no target is left alive. Should any in the group be injured, they go to one of the organization's hospitals. If you can buy a governor, you can buy a hospital. I never knew the names of the people I was involved with, he continues. There was a person who directed our group and he knew everything. But if your job is to execute people, that is all you do. You don't know the reasons or names. I would be in a safe house with the kidnapped for a month and never speak to them. Then, if I was told to kill them, I would. We would take them to the place where they would be killed, take off their clothes. We would kill them exactly the way we were ordered, a bullet to the neck, acid on the bodies. There would be cases where you would be killing someone, strangling them, and they would stop breathing, and you would get a call, don't kill them, and so you would have to know how to resuscitate them or we would be killed because the boss never makes a mistake. Everything is contained and sealed. For a while they used crazy kids to steal cars for the work, but the kids, about 40 of them, got too arrogant, talking and selling drugs in the nightclubs. This violated an agreement with the governor of Chihuahua to keep the city quiet. So one night around 10 years ago, 50 police, and 150 guys from the organization who were to ensure the job was done, rounded up all the kids on Avenida Juarez. They were not tortured. They were killed with a single headshot and buried in one hole. No, he smiles at me. I will not tell you where that hole is. He has trouble remembering some things. I would get up in the morning and do a line, he explains, then have a glass of whiskey. Then I would go to lunch. I would never sleep more than a few hours, little naps. It is hard to sleep during a time of war. Even if my eyes were closed, I was alert. I slept with a loaded AK-47 on one side, a .38 on the other. The safeties were always off. Do I know of the death houses? He asks. It would take a book to do the death houses. After all, I know where 600 bodies are buried in safe houses in Juarez. There is one death house they have never revealed that I know has 56 bodies. Just as there is a rancho where the officials say they found 2 bodies, but I know that rancho has 32 corpses. If the police really investigated, they would find bodies. But obviously, you cannot trust the police. He especially wants to know what I know about the 2 death houses uncovered last winter. I say one had 9 bodies, the other 36. No, he insists, the second one had 38, 2 of them women. He carefully draws me the layout of this second death house. One of the women, he notes, was killed for speaking too much. The other was a mistake. These do happen, though the bosses never admit to it. But he keeps returning to the death house with the 38 bodies. It has memories for him. I remember standing on the quiet dirt street as the authorities made a show of digging up the dead. Half a mile away was a hospital where some machine-gunned people were taken that spring, but the killers followed and killed them in the emergency room. Shot their kinfolk in the waiting room also. The narcos, he wants me to understand, have informants in the DEA and the FBI. They work until they are useless. Then they are killed. As for those who inform to the FBI and DEA, they die ugly. He explains. They were brought handcuffed behind the back to the death house where they found 36 bodies, he rolls on. A t-shirt was soaked with gasoline and put on their backs, lit, and then after a while pulled from their backs. The skin came off with it. Both men made sounds like cattle being killed. They were injected with a drug so they would not lose consciousness. Then they put alcohol on their testicles and lit them. They jumped so high they were handcuffed, and still I never saw people jump so high. We are slipping now, all the masks have fallen to the floor. The veteran, the professional sicario, is walking me through a key assignment he completed. Their backs were like leather and did not bleed. They put plastic bags on their heads to smother them and then revived them with alcohol under their noses. All they ever said to us was, "We will see you in hell." This went on for 3 days. They smelled terrible because of the burns. They brought in a doctor to keep reviving them. They wanted them to live 1 more day. After a while they defecated blood. They shoved broomsticks up their asses. The second day a person came and told them, "I warned you this was going to happen." They said, "Kill us." The guys lived 3 days. The doctor kept injecting them to keep them alive and he had to work hard. Eventually they died of the torture. They never asked God for help. They just kept saying, "We will see you in hell." I buried them with their faces down and poured on a whole lot of lime. He is excited. It is all back. He can feel the shovel in his hand. He is calm now. He is revisiting this evil time, he says, simply for my benefit. He takes his various drawings how to do a hit, where some people were buried in a death house, looks at the green schematics he has created, and then slowly tears them into little squares until the torn heap can never be reconstructed. Until late 2006, he worked all over Mexico for different groups, and the various organizations generally got along. There were small moments, such as when others tried to take over Juarez and it was necessary to necklace them. But his life in the main was calm. So calm he did not need to know who he really worked for. I received orders from 2 people. They ran me. I never knew which cartel I worked for. Now there is Vicente Carrillo against Chapo Guzman, that is, Joaquin Guzman Lora, head of Mexico's largest cartel. But I never met any bosses, so when the war started around 2006, I did not know which one I did the killing for. And orders could cross from one group to another. I am living in a cell and I simply take orders. In 30 minutes in Juarez, 60 well-trained and heavily armed men can assemble in 30 cars and circulate as a show of force. Then, at my level, we began to get orders to kill each other. He is kidnapped but let go after an hour. This unsettles him, and he begins to think about escaping his life. But that is not a simple matter, since if you leave you are murdered. As the war escalates, he begins to distance himself from people he knows and works with. He tries to fade away. By this time, a third of the people he knows have been killed. They were seen as useless and then killed. He doesn't know the boss, he is still not even sure who his boss is. He drinks at home. The streets are too dangerous. New people arrive and he does not know them. He is not safe. So he flees. He confides in a friend, who betrays him. He pauses at this point. He knows he is guilty of a fatal error. He has violated a fundamental rule: you can be betrayed only by someone you trust. So you survive by trusting no one. Still, there is this shred of humanity in all of us, and in the end we feel the need to trust someone, to call someone friend, to share feelings with others. And this need is fatal. It is the very need he has exploited for years, the need he used when he put people in the police car and told them they would be all right if they cooperated, would be back with their families in no time if they were calm. And by God, they did trust him and rode across Mexico, went through checkpoints and said nothing, never told a single soul they had been kidnapped. They would trust him as they were tortured in the safe houses. They would help mop the floors, clean up the vomit and blood. They would compose songs. They would trust him right up to that instant when he strangled them. So his friend gives him up. He is taken at 10 p.m., and this time he is held until 3 a.m. But something has changed within him. And some things have not changed. 4 men take him to a safe house. They remove all of his clothing but his shorts. They take pool balls in their hands and beat him. But he can tell they are amateurs. They do not even handcuff him, and this is disturbing to him. He is the captive of third-raters. As they beat him, he prays and prays and prays. He also laughs because he is appalled by their incompetence. They have not bound him and their blows do not disable him. He sizes them up and in his mind plans how he will kill them, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. And at the same moment, he is praying to God to help him so that he will not kill them, so that he can stop his life of murder. As he sits in the room, sipping coffee, and recalling this moment, his face comes alive. He is passionate now. He is approaching the very moment of his salvation. Some people pretend to accept Christ, he says, but at that moment he could feel total acceptance fill his body. He could feel peace. They point rifles at him. He cannot stop laughing. I was afraid, he explains. I realized I would have to kill them all. 2 of the armed men left. One other guy went to the bathroom. He looks at the remaining captor. The guy says, I don't have a problem with you. Once, you told me to be careful or they would kill me. You did me a favor. So, I am praying to God, help me. I don't want to kill these people. And I know I can do it rapidly. The guy turns his back on me and says, get out, go. He opens the door and runs without his shoes or clothes. His face is stern now. He has come to the place, the very moment that has permitted him to recount the kidnappings, the tortures, the killings. He is selling and what he is selling is God. He is believing, and what he believes based on his own life is that anyone can be redeemed. And that it is possible to leave the organization and survive. His thoughts are a jumble as he speaks. He is telling of his salvation, and yet he feels the tug of his killings. He feels the pride in being feared. Back at the beginning, when he first started with the state police, that was when Oropesa, the doctor and newspaper columnist, was killed. And Oropesa's killers, he now recalls, were his mentors, his teachers. He remembers that after the murder, the state government announced a big investigation to get the killers. And one of them, a fellow cop, stayed at his own police station until the noise quieted and the charade ended. He is excited now, he is living in his past. The only reason I am here is God saved me. I repented. After all these years I am talking to you. I am having to relieve things that are dead to me. I don't want to be part of this life. I don't want to know the news. You must write this so that other Sicarios know it is possible to leave. They must know God can help them. They are not monsters. They have been trained like special forces in the army. But they never realize they have been trained to serve the devil. Imagine being 19 and being able to call up a plane. I like the power. I never realized until God talked to me that I could get out. Still, when God frees me, I remain a wolf. I can't become a lamb. I remain a terrible person, but now I have God on my side. He stares at me as I write in a black notebook. His body seems to loom over the table. This is the point in all stories where everyone discovers who they really are. He says, I have now relived something I should never have opened up. Are you the medium to reach others? I prayed to God asking what I should do. And you are the answer. You are going to write this story because God has a purpose in you writing this story. God has given you this mission. No one will understand this story except those who have been in the life. And God will tell you how to write this story. Then we embrace and pray. I can feel his hand on my shoulder probing, seeking the power of the Lord in me. I have my work to do now. And so we go our separate ways. In the parking lot he moves with ease, in a state of grace. The sun blazes, the sky aches blue. Life feels good. His eyes relax and he laughs. And then I see him memorize my license plate in a quick and practiced glance. He has told me he is bathed in the blood of the lamb, but his eyes remain those of the wolf.